You spend hundreds of dollars on a high-end fishing rod. You spend even more on a silky smooth reel. You wake up at 4 in the morning, burn $20 in gas to get to the lake, and spend hours studying the water. But when that massive fish finally decides to eat your lure, you are trusting the most important fraction of a second to a rusty piece of metal you bought 3 years ago. Does that make any sense to you? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to talk about a dirty little secret that most fishermen refuse to admit. We are talking about why you are still using the exact same hooks from last fall and why it is absolutely destroying your hookup ratio. I am going to show you exactly why that old school mentality of never changing your hooks is a massive mistake. By the end of this video, you will look at your tackle box in a completely different way. Tell me the truth down in the comments. How long has it been since you actually replaced the treble hooks on your favorite crankbait? Be honest. This topic is incredibly important because it is the #1 reason guys go home angry after a long day on the water. We have this stubborn old-school belief in the fishing community. It is the grandfather mentality. The idea that if a lure caught fish 5 years ago, it will catch fish today exactly the way it is. We throw our wet lures back into the plastic trays. We close the lid, trap all that moisture inside, and let them sit in the garage for months over the winter. Then spring rolls around, we tie on that same bait, and we expect magic to happen. We do this because changing hooks feels like a chore. It takes time. Split rings are annoying to deal with, and buying fresh hooks feels like an extra expense we do not want to pay. So we get lazy. We convince ourselves that as long as the hook has a point on it, it will do the job. But fishing technology has changed. The way we fish has changed. And the reality of what happens to metal when it hits rocks, wood, and water over and over again is something you can no longer ignore. Let us break down exactly why this habit is hurting you. Let us step back and look at a situation we all know too well. Imagine it is early morning. The sun is just starting to peek over the tree line, and there is a thick fog rolling across the calm water. You make a perfect cast right to the edge of the lily pads. You reel in slowly. Suddenly, you feel that massive thump on the end of your line. Your heart skips a beat. You rear back with all your strength to set the hook. For 2 glorious seconds, you feel the heavy weight of a giant fish. The rod bends in a beautiful arc. And then just like that, the line goes completely slack. The fish is gone. You reel in your lure, your hands are shaking, and you start making excuses. You tell yourself the fish just missed it. You tell yourself it was a short strike. You blame the wind, the line, or the rod, but the ugly truth is staring right back at you from the end of your line. You look at that crankbait you used all through last fall. The paint is chipped. And those treble hooks? They are dull, slightly bent, and covered in a fine layer of microscopic rust. That fish did not miss your lure. Your hook simply failed to penetrate its jaw. This is the brutal reality of fishing with old gear. We spend hours trying to find the fish, but when we finally get the bite, we rely on compromised metal to do the hardest job of all. It is a heartbreaking scenario, but it happens every single day. Let us talk about the actual physics of a hook point. This is where the old school myths really start to fall apart. When you take a brand new hook out of the package, the point is incredibly sharp. It is designed to pierce through hard bone and tough cartilage with minimal effort. But the moment you start fishing with it, that point is under constant attack. Every time your lure drags across a gravel bottom, bounces off a submerged stump, or gets pulled through heavy weeds, that microscopic tip takes damage. We are talking about impacts that roll the very tip of the metal over. You cannot easily see it with your bare eyes, but it is there. If you used that same hook for 10 trips last fall, that point has hit rocks hundreds of times. By the time spring arrives, you are essentially fishing with a blunt instrument. When you try to set the hook on a big fish, the blunt point hits the hard roof of the fish's mouth and slides right out instead of digging in. You are essentially trying to punch a hole through a piece of leather with a butter knife. It is physically impossible to get a good hook set, no matter how hard you yank on the fishing rod. Now, let us discuss the silent killer inside your tackle box. I am talking about rust. Many fishermen believe that if a hook is not completely orange and falling apart, it is still perfectly fine to use. This is a massive mistake. When you fish in the fall and toss a wet lure back into your plastic tackle tray, you are creating a tiny greenhouse. The water evaporates, hits the closed lid, and creates extreme humidity inside the box. Over the long winter months, this moisture attacks the metal of your hooks. Even modern hooks with protective coatings will start to suffer from microcorrosion. This corrosion creates a rough, textured surface along the wire of the hook. So even if the point somehow remained relatively sharp, the wire itself now acts like sandpaper. When you set the hook, that rough surface creates intense friction as it tries to slide into the jaw of the fish. This friction requires twice as much force from your rod to achieve the same penetration. Most of the time, the hook stops halfway in. The fish shakes its head once, the hole widens, and the hook falls right out. You blame bad luck, but the truth is, rust created drag, and drag cost you the fish. You will often hear the older generation of fishermen talk about sharpening their hooks. They will pull out a little metal file and scrape away at a rusty hook until it looks somewhat shiny again. They proudly say that a good fisherman never throws away a hook. Back in the day when hooks were made from thick basic steel, this was actually good advice, but things have changed drastically. Today, the best hooks on the market are chemically sharpened. They undergo a complex manufacturing process that makes the point thinner and sharper than a needle. They also have special low-friction coatings on them to help them slide into the fish smoothly. When you take a metal file to a modern, chemically sharpened hook, you are completely destroying it. You are scraping off the protective coating, exposing the raw metal beneath, and ruining the microscopic geometry of the point. Sure, it might feel a little scratchy against your skin, which tricks you into thinking it is sharp, but you have actually created a jagged, uneven edge that will rust twice as fast and fail to penetrate deep bone. Throw the file away and just replace the hook. Let us break down the thumbnail test. This is a classic trick, and it is the only way you should be checking your old hooks right now. If you are sitting at home watching this, I want you to go grab your tackle box later and try this out. Take that crankbait you love so much, the one you caught a bunch of fish on last October. Take the point of the treble hook and lightly drag it across your thumbnail at a slight angle. Do not press hard. Just let the weight of the hook do the work. If the hook is genuinely sharp, it will immediately bite into the nail and stop moving. It will feel sticky. Now try it with the hook from last fall. I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, that hook is going to slide right across your thumbnail like a sled on ice. It will leave a faint white scratch, but it will not dig in. If that hook cannot even catch on the soft surface of your fingernail, how in the world do you expect it to grab hold of the hard, bony jaw of a trophy bass? The thumbnail test never lies. It is the quickest way to realize that your favorite lure is completely compromised and ready to break your heart on the water. Think about the financial paradox of modern fishing. It is actually hilarious when you think about it. I know guys who will spend $40,000 on a fancy bass boat. They will mount 3 different sonar screens on the console that cost $3,000 each. They buy special braided line that costs $30 a spool. They wear high-performance fishing shirts and fancy polarized sunglasses. But when I look at the end of their line, they are throwing a topwater frog with hooks that look like they were salvaged from a shipwreck. They refuse to spend $5 on a fresh pack of replacement hooks. We obsess over all the expensive gear that helps us find the fish, but we completely neglect the one piece of equipment that actually physically touches the fish. Your boat does not catch the fish. Your expensive sonar does not catch the fish. The hook catches the fish. If your hook is dull, rusted, or bent, all that other money you spent is completely wasted. Stop stepping over dollars to save pennies. Replacing your hooks is the cheapest and most effective way to drastically improve your success rate on the water. Let us talk about weedless jigs and Texas-rigged plastics. These are some of the most popular ways to fish, especially in the fall when the weeds are dying off. Because the hook point is hidden inside the plastic or protected by a weed guard, fishermen assume the point stays perfectly sharp forever. This is a dangerous illusion. When you drag a heavy jig through thick cover, bounce it over sunken trees, and pull it through gravel beds, the hook point is still taking a beating. You might catch 3 or 4 decent fish in an afternoon. Every time you catch a fish, the hook point scrapes against their teeth and jawbone. Then you take that same jig, put it back in your box, and pull it out the following spring. You rig a brand new soft plastic bait on it, thinking you are ready to go. But that hook point is already dull from last year's battles. When a fish bites your jig, you already have to set the hook hard enough to push the metal through the plastic bait, past the weed guard, and into the fish's mouth. If the point is dull, you will just rip the plastic out of the fish's mouth without ever burying the hook. It feels like a missed bite, but it was a dull hook. We need to address the cold water excuse. Early spring fishing is tough. The water is cold, the fish are sluggish, and the bites are often very subtle. When guys go out for their first trip of the year using their old tackle, they miss a lot of fish. And what do they say? They sit on the boat ramp and complain that the fish were just swiping at the bait. They claim the fish were short striking because the water was too cold. They blame the mood of the fish. But let us look at reality. When a fish is sluggish, it does not strike with the same aggressive force as it does in the summer. It might just suck the bait in lightly or nip at the back hook. In these situations, you need a hook that is terrifyingly sharp. You need a hook that will stick to the fish the moment it touches the inside of its mouth, even without a massive hook set from you. If you are using last fall's dulled-down treble hooks, those subtle spring bites will never translate into hooked fish. The lure will literally slip right out of their mouth before you even realize they had it. The fish are not short striking, your hooks are just rejecting them. Another massive issue with keeping the same hooks tied on for months is metal fatigue. This is something nobody talks about. Let us say you were fishing a crankbait last fall and you got it snagged on a heavy underwater branch. You pulled, and finally the lure popped free. But when you got it back to the boat, one of the prongs on the treble hook was bent outwards. Because you were in a hurry, you grabbed your fishing pliers, bent the hook back into its normal shape, and kept casting. The lure looked fine, so you left it in your box all winter. Fast forward to today. You hook into a massive fish. The fish makes a powerful run under the boat. Suddenly, the hook just straightens out, and the fish is gone. You are left staring at a straight piece of wire. Why did this happen? Because when you bent that hook out on the snag and then bent it back with your pliers, you severely weakened the structural integrity of the metal wire. It suffered from invisible metal fatigue. It might look normal to the naked eye, but its strength is reduced by more than half. Never trust a hook that has been bent and forced back into shape. It is a ticking time bomb. Let us talk about the psychology of the lucky lure. Every fisherman has one. It is that specific jerkbait or spinnerbait that just seems to have the magic action. You caught your personal best on it last year. Because of the emotional attachment to this specific piece of plastic and paint, you treat it like a sacred relic. You do not want to mess with it. You are terrified that if you change the hooks or replace the split rings, you might somehow ruin the magic balance of the lure. So you leave the original factory hooks on it for 3 years. The hooks get dull, they get slightly rusted, but you refuse to change them because it is your lucky bait. This emotional attachment is blinding you to logic. The magic of that lure is in the wobble, the dive lip, and the paint pattern. The hooks are just removable hardware. By refusing to upgrade the dull hooks on your best producing lure, you are actively sabotaging your best chances of catching a giant. You are taking your most dangerous weapon and intentionally keeping it unloaded. Take a deep breath, get your split ring pliers, and put some fresh premium hooks on your lucky bait. The magic will still be there. Now we have to look at the gauge and thickness of the hook wire. This plays a massive role in why old hooks fail. Let us compare a thick, heavy wire flipping hook to a very thin wire finesse hook used on drop shot rigs. Heavy wire hooks take a lot more force to penetrate a fish. When a heavy wire hook gets dull from sitting in your box since last fall, it becomes almost impossible to drive home without a massive heavy action rod and braided line. On the other hand, thin wire hooks penetrate very easily, but they have a different fatal flaw over time. Thin wire hooks are incredibly susceptible to rust and microbends. If you leave a thin wire hook tied on all winter, the slightest bit of corrosion will eat right through the thin metal, making it brittle. When you go to set the hook on a springtime base, that brittle thin wire will simply snap in half. You will reel in your line and find half a hook left on your knot. Whether you use thick wire that gets too blunt to penetrate or thin wire that gets too brittle to hold together, time and neglect are the enemies of both. Every style of hook breaks down over the winter. Let us imagine a conversation that happens on the dock every single weekend. Two guys are loading their boats onto the trailers after a tournament. One guy is frustrated, holding his head in his hands. He says he had the winning bag of fish on the line, but he lost 3 big ones right at the side of the boat. He says they jumped and threw the bait. He blames his rod action. He blames the way the fish were fighting. The other guy just listens quietly. The second guy did not lose a single fish all day. He landed every bite he got. What is the difference between these two fishermen? It is not luck. The first guy took his rods out of the garage exactly how he left them last November. He did not check his knots, and he did not change his hooks. The second guy spent Thursday night in his garage. He sat down with a cup of coffee, a pair of split ring pliers, and a brand new pack of premium treble hooks. He methodically swapped out the hardware on every single bait he planned to throw. He controlled the variables. He understood that when a fish jumps and shakes its head, a sharp hook stays pinned, while a dull hook easily dislodges. Preparation beats luck every single time. Think about the anatomy of the fish you are trying to catch. Let us focus on a largemouth bass for a moment. When you look inside the mouth of a big bass, it is not just soft flesh. The roof of the mouth is covered in hard, bony plates. The hinges of the jaw are tough cartilage. To get a secure hook set, your hook point has to find a soft spot, or it has to be sharp enough to crack into that bone. Small fish are easy to hook because their mouths are smaller and softer, and they tend to swallow smaller baits whole. This gives you a false sense of security. You might go out in the spring with your old hooks, catch a bunch of 2-pound bass, and think your gear is perfectly fine. But small fish are not the ultimate test of your equipment. The true test comes when a 6-pounder inhales your bait. A fish of that size has a massive mouth with thick, dense bone structure. A dull hook from last fall might grab a little skin on a small fish, but it will harmlessly slide off the bony plate of a giant. Do not let small fish convince you that your dull hooks are acceptable. Prepare your gear for the biggest fish in the lake. Let us talk about the spread of the rust virus inside your tackle box. This is a fascinating and depressing thing to witness. You have a tray full of beautiful, expensive jerkbaits. You decide to tie one on during a rainy day in the late fall. You fish with it, catch a few, and then drop it right back into the tray with the others. While it is still soaking wet, you close the box. Over the next few weeks, that single wet lure begins to rust. But it does not stop there. The moisture evaporates inside the sealed compartment and settles on the pristine hooks of the other lures right next to it. By the time spring comes around, that one lazy mistake has ruined the hooks on 5 different expensive lures. They are all covered in a dusty orange film. When you finally open the box in April, you are greeted by a graveyard of compromised metal. This is why professional anglers are obsessed with tackle management. They leave their boxes open to dry. They use moisture-absorbing packets. And most importantly, they inspect and replace any hook that shows the slightest sign of discoloration. A rusty hook is not just a weak hook, it is a danger to the rest of your investment. Consider the actual mechanics of a slackline bite. This is a scenario where hook sharpness becomes the most critical factor in the world. You are fishing a heavy football jig in deep water. You lift the rod tip, drag the bait over a rock, and then drop the rod tip to let the bait fall back down. Your line goes completely slack. During that moment of slack, a massive fish inhales the jig. Because there is no tension on the line, you do not feel the strike right away. The fish holds the bait in its mouth for a second, realizes it feels unnatural, and starts to spit it out. If your hook is brand new, chemically sharpened, and coated for low friction, just the sheer weight of the jig head falling inside the fish's mouth might be enough for the point to catch the skin. That tiny prick delays the fish from spitting it out for a fraction of a second, giving you time to see your line twitch and set the hook. But if you're using a dull hook from last season, it will slide right out of the fish's mouth smoothly without catching on anything. The fish spits it out, swims away, and you never even knew you had the bite of a lifetime. We need to discuss the tournament angler mentality versus the weekend warrior mentality. Professional fishermen who fish for hundreds of thousands of dollars do not take chances. If a pro catches 2 or 3 good fish on a crankbait, they will often sit down right there in the boat, pull out their pliers, and swap out the treble hooks for brand new ones before they make another cast. They know that the intense pressure of fighting heavy fish dulls the points rapidly. Now look at the weekend warrior. They will buy a crankbait at the store, tie it on, and use it for 3 consecutive years without ever touching the hardware. They wonder why the pros always seem to land the big ones while they always seem to lose them at the boat. The difference is not always skill. The difference is hardware maintenance. You do not need to change your hooks after every single fish like a millionaire pro, but starting a brand new fishing season with hooks left over from last autumn is asking for failure. Adopting just 10% of that professional mindset will drastically change your success rate on the weekends. Let us talk about the trap of factory hooks. This is a hard truth about the fishing tackle industry. When you buy a lure off the shelf at your local sporting goods store, even if it is a fairly expensive lure, the manufacturer is running a business. To keep their profit margins high, many companies will equip their lures with mid-grade, standard hooks. They look shiny and nice in the package, but they are not top-tier quality. If those average factory hooks sit in your damp tackle box all winter, they degrade significantly faster than premium aftermarket hooks. One of the greatest secrets to landing more fish is to strip off the factory hardware the moment you buy a new lure. Replace them with high-end, chemically sharpened, short-shank treble hooks. Yes, it costs a little more money up front, but when you hook into the fish of a lifetime, you will not be praying that a cheap, mass-produced piece of rusty metal holds together. Upgrading your hardware is an investment in your own peace of mind, and it completely eliminates the excuse of equipment failure when a big fish strikes. Let us paint another picture. You are throwing a spinner bait around laid-down trees. The water is stained, so you are burning the bait just below the surface to create a reaction strike. A giant fish comes out from under a log and absolutely smashes the bait. It is a violent, aggressive collision. You swing hard and feel heavy resistance, but then the bait comes flying back at your face, missing the fish entirely. You reel it in and check the bait. The wire is bent, the blades are fine, but the large main hook is dull. In reaction strikes, fish often swipe at the bait quickly without fully engulfing it. The hook point has to find purchase on the outside of the face, the gill plate, or the side of the jaw. This requires surgical sharpness. A blunt old hook will just glance off the hard scales of the fish like a pebble skipping across a pond. You will feel the heavy thud of the impact, but the hook will fail to penetrate. If you had taken 2 minutes the night before to check the sharpness of that spinnerbait hook, you would be holding a trophy instead of dodging a flying piece of lead. One of the most stubborn habits to break is the refusal to carry spare hooks on the water. How many times have you been out on a boat, found a school of actively feeding fish, and then accidentally snapped the point of your hook on a rock? Instead of sitting down, cutting the line, and tying on a fresh hook, you panic. You do not want to waste time while the fish are biting. So, you dig through your box, find another identical lure that has been sitting there since last year, tie it on, and throw it out. You hook a fish, and it immediately pulls off because the hooks on the backup lure are dull and rusty. You sacrificed quality for speed, and it cost you the catch. The best habit you can build this season is to keep a small waterproof organizer box filled with brand new replacement hooks in your boat or backpack. Do not keep them mixed in with the wet lures. Keep them dry, pristine, and ready for deployment. When a hook gets dull or damaged, take the 60 seconds required to change it. Those 60 seconds will save you hours of frustration later in the day. Ultimately, holding on to last year's hooks is an act of self-sabotage. Fishing is a sport full of variables that you cannot control. You cannot control the wind. You cannot control the barometric pressure. You cannot control the water temperature or whether the fish decide to feed. The only thing you have absolute 100% control over is the equipment you present to them. Why would you willingly handicap yourself by using degraded gear? Changing your hooks before the spring season starts is a ritual. It is a way of clearing out the failures of the past year and preparing for success in the new one. Sit down at your workbench, put on some music, and go through your boxes. Test every point on your thumbnail. If it slides, it dies. Cut it off, throw it in the trash, and put fresh steel on your baits. When you finally hit the water and get that first massive strike of the year, you will swing the rod with total confidence. You will know that when the metal hits the jaw, it is going to stick, hold, and bring that fish all the way to the net. Let us bring it all together. The brutal truth is that your grandfather's advice about never changing hooks is completely outdated. If you are still relying on the same dull, micro-rusted, fatigued metal that you dragged through the rocks all through last fall, you are actively choosing to lose fish. We proved today that microscopic damage, rust drag, and metal fatigue are silent killers in your tackle box. The thumbnail test is your best friend. If that hook does not instantly stick to your nail, it belongs in the garbage, not in the water. The most unexpected turning point for most anglers is realizing that they do not need to buy a $50 magic lure to catch more fish. They just need to spend $5 to make the lures they already own actually function correctly. This one simple change in your tackle preparation will drastically reduce your heartbreak on the water. You will stop blaming short strikes and you will start netting more giants. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out today. If this video made you rethink what is in your tackle box, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps the channel grow. Now, I want to hear from you down in the comments. What is the most heartbreaking story you have of a giant fish coming unbuttoned right at the side of the boat? Tell me the story and let us talk about it.